31st, 1889, engineer John Park rode through the torrential downpour to the nearby town of South Fork. He was not familiar with the town, but he needed to have a message telegraphed to the towns below. The South Fork Dam, the largest man-made lake in the United States, was in danger of failing. He passed this message on to a local citizen who then advised 27-year-old telegraph operator Emma Ehrenfeld. This dam had failed before, the second failure being 27 years prior in 1862. Emma sent the message to the next tower in Mineral Point. Within the next few hours, the people in the Conemaugh River Valley would experience the indescribable.
I can't describe it to you. It just seemed like a mountain coming.
I traveled back to South Fork to explore the events of that day and the areas little known to outsiders of this community.
So this is actually the old road into this place.
Right. He was the last surviving member who was actually at the dam.
Her longer with a raised the screen.
And they were all connected by a boardwalk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Go down to the viaduct.
Mainly only the locals know about here.
The viaduct is right there. His body was carried all the way down to the viaduct where it was found 10 days later.
Really? That's Unger's house.
That's Unger's house. It used to be a property was owned by a family called Leahy. He said that the lake was, a certain amount of the lake was on his land. He would let the locals fish, and that upset the clubhouse members because they imported all that black bass from Erie, and they didn't think it was right. Of course, for the locals, it was meal. You know, it wasn't sport.
Yeah.
So they sent Unger to go over to negotiate to try to get the land from him. And he was very slick, and not in a bad way. He was an honorable guy. And so he managed to do it, but once he saw the property and everything, he conveniently put the deed in his name. And I guess that miffed some people in the clubhouse, but they got over it.
Yeah, right.
So he became the second president of the club.
Okay.
So the initial push was about 300-foot section, so a good 1/3 of the whole dam went in one fell swoop.
So we were talking about the cottages, and there's actually still cottages here.
Yes.
And you're saying it's up,
They're way over there.
but that's a town that's now built
Yeah.
where the lake was, or where the cottages were at least.
Yeah, well, they built, once the dam happened, the town of St. Michael came about.
Okay.
And one of the reasons they widened the dam was because, kind of the wow factor, because it was stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you're in Pittsburgh and 2 hours later you get to South Fork and you take your buggy ride up here to see a mountain lake this big.
Yeah.
And not only that, they had sailboats on here. You know, they had steam-powered boats. It must have just
really?
been
Steam-powered boats too?
Yeah, they had these steam-powered launches. They had several of them. They gave them names, and when they would do their annual parade, they would tie all the boats, and the steam launches would pull them all around the lake. They put lanterns on them and stuff. It was
I didn't know that.
quite an exciting time for him.
Yeah.
So not only just the impressive physical piece, but it seemed otherworldly for them.
Yeah, right.
So he wanted to maximize that. And to do so, he lowered it to make it wide enough for two carriages, one to watch, and the other one could still pass by.
Interesting.
Now, from an engineering perspective, he could have achieved the same thing by actually building it up. Ruff did everything he did to cut corners. Everything he did was shoddy. And he wasn't an engineer. And whenever they suggested to bring up engineers, he'd have none of it.
So this was the original spillway right here?
Yes.
Okay.
This isn't obviously the structure is a replica or rebuilt, but this is exactly where it was. And we could walk down, just for your own knowledge, I think you'll like it. It's just about 200 feet down this way. This was the road that brought them up to the cottages.
Okay.
They would come across here, they would go across there's a wooden bridge similar to this. It's no longer there, obviously, but you can see where it would have been.
The bridge goes over the spillway then?
Spillway.
Okay.
So they would go across that bridge and then come up here, and this was like the wow factor. You know, you pop up out of this,
and they can see
and it's all this expanse of water in front of them.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons I said why they widened it, so that people could have a carriage could pass while onlookers could still look at it.
I see.
And here is where the only functional spillway. The dam was originally built with the main spillway, an auxiliary spillway on the other side, and 5 2-foot discharge pipes.
Right.
By lowering the dam, completely negated the ox spillway. All the five pipes had been removed and sold for scrap.
And that was by the state of Pennsylvania before they sold it, or?
There's conjecture, but we think it was actually, it potentially could have been part of the deal when Ruff bought the property, because the guy before him, he paid $2,500, but they were friends.
Oh.
And he said, well, I'll tell you what, give it to me for $2,000, but you can sell the pipes for scrap.
I see.
That may or may not have happened,
Yeah.
but that's a strong possibility.
Okay.
Nobody really knows. Your dam is not only lower, you're without your ox spillway, you're without your discharge pipes, and the metal weir, that triangular weir that you've seen in pictures,
Yeah.
was right here.
Okay.
And it was used to keep the black bass that they imported.
Oh, so for some reason I thought that was on the main dam. It was actually on that spillway. That's
was
the one
right
that they
here.
wanted to remove, I guess. He wanted to get that out of there.
He didn't at first. He didn't at first. In fact, he refused to do it, even though it was suggested for him by one of the local towns guys to do that, and he was adamant about it. No. After some time passed, he realized he was running out of options. By then, it was too clogged with debris, and they had Italian workers were up here. They were here to build a sewer system for the clubhouse.
Oh.
So he had a lot of labor, but they couldn't move it.
Oh, interesting. I was wondering who the workers were. They are actually here to do another job for a sewer system for this place.
John Park, the head engineer, plays a big role in the whole day. He was the head engineer for the sewage system. And they brought in about 40 plus or minus Italian immigrants that were working it. So he was using them to try. They did a number of things. All were very futile. One, he tried to dig where the ox spillway originally was with picks and shovels. They hit hard ground, impossible. Couldn't do anything. They even brought a horse up with a plow to try to plow up along the top here to somehow lift, to make it a little taller. That was, it was a futile effort.
Yeah.
And so the last thing that they could think to do was try to get rid of the weir, and he couldn't. This is a much easier in the wintertime.
So this is actually the old road into this place.
Right. So from the spillway that we were just at, which is about 90 degrees off, it went around, and we can actually walk back up through it. Spillway came back around and came down, and you can see where it went through.
Okay.
And this paralleled the face of the dam all the way down into the river.
Okay.
And right here is where they needed the first wooden bridge.
Okay.
So they come across here, they couldn't see the dam until you break out at the top.
So the wooden bridge was right here. That's these posts right here.
No,
Oh.
I'm sure. Somewhere in this area.
Okay.
When they excavated for 219, they changed a lot of the topography.
I see. Okay.
So right up in here, they had a lot of people that came to watch to see what was going on, including a group of young teenage boys. One of them was named Ued Schwarzentroover. He lived a very long life, and he actually was interviewed in 1964.
Colonel Unger would have raised the screens on that bridge. That spillway would have taken all the water.
He was the last surviving member who was actually at the dam the day he came up with a group of buddies, and very shortly before the dam actually gave, it already had about a foot of water running over the center part. His buddy thought it'd be a great idea, like most young teenage boys do, to run across. And he ran the length of the dam.
Jeez.
But he never had a chance to get back, because by the time he got to the other side, while he was there, the dam gave way.
Wow.
So he had to find a new way home and a good excuse of why he's so late.
Right.
When the dam failed, not all of this was gone. They removed a good bit of it to build the tracks, as I was telling you. That was tracks were built by the Berwyn Mine Company.
I see.
Very soon, like I want to say it was 1892. So the University of Pittsburgh Johnstown engineers did a 5-year study back in they finished it in 2016. Without a doubt, if the dam had been reconstructed the way it was originally designed and the way it was originally built, the flood never would have happened.
Without the removal of the pipes?
Without, if they had not lowered it if they had not removed the pipes,
Okay.
if the aux spillway was still functional, all of those things. When Ruff took it over, it had already failed.
In
You know,
62 or something like that, right?
Yeah. This tower was the wooden control tower, and it controlled the valves to the 5 discharge pipes down here. All 5 pipes entered into the stone culvert, and then, of course, out at the base of the dam, out into the river. Well, they removed the 5 2-foot in diameter discharge pipes. At some point, the stone culvert collapsed, and in 1862, this burnt down.
Okay.
But what's neat is when we go on the other side, you can still see what's left of the
that is
stone
cool.
and the wood.
Oh, so this tower would have been somewhere in that area?
Right here.
Okay. When you say there's an auxiliary, because I know they built an emergency one real quick that day, right? But you're
No,
talking
they
about...
tried to.
They tried to, okay.
They tried to do it because when they lowered the dam, it wasn't particularly big, the auxiliary spillway, but it was sufficient.
Okay.
And as an auxiliary to the main one, which you saw was pretty ample, and it was on this side. Well, when they shaved the top off the dam, it negated it.
That's right. Okay.
So they tried to dig it that morning in desperation in the same space, but the ground was like rock. It was too hard.
So okay.
But one thing that's kind of interesting is when John Park, who was the young engineer that was a main player in that day, he came over to see, and he found out long after they gave up doing it that the water itself had dug a channel 20 feet wide and 2 feet deep. So in essence, the water was creating the very spillway that the men wanted to create.
Oh, wow.
Little twist of fate.
Wow,
there.
yeah. Reading in your book that, you know, the way they were standing on top of this thing, and then Park ordered them off when he saw it was, I guess, futile.
Yeah, they were trying to, well, you can imagine. I mean, this, in the din and the thunder and lightning and the driving rain. And, you know, I mentioned about when Park came back and he saw what was being done over there, he actually, for the first time, thought there might be some hope, because he was an engineer.
Right.
By the standards of the day, he trained for 3 years. He didn't graduate, but that, by the standards of the day, that qualified him to be an engineer. When he came back from town, he saw more bad things happening in the middle, and then he thought, this is not good. Then he saw this, and he started to take hope, and he went to go get dinner up at the clubhouse where he was staying. But when he came back, he saw that a section had already given way.
Oh.
And so he got off his horse and led it across. Now he knew things were really bad. And one of the fascinating twists in history, he kept this idea to himself and later revealed it. But during the day, being an engineer, he was going to suggest to Unger that they create their own breach.
Huh.
In other words, they were going to breach the dam to let it partially collapse. Obviously, you can see what the trade-off is.
Yeah.
Any damage that would be done he'd be blamed for, and deaths. But if he didn't do it and it was catastrophic, then he would always second-guess himself as to doing it. Well, we know how that ended.
Yeah, all right.
But he had that thought, but he never told it to anybody until after the
Interesting.
fact.
Huh. I think it was Unger that he was arguing with about removing the grace on the other side because he didn't want to lose the black bass. And I guess this was opening up in 2 weeks from this, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It was a local that actually was suggesting to Unger.
Okay.
And in my book, I talk about how it became very confrontational, and they could see that. And the man I mentioned who was interviewed so many years later, he said that he was watching them and he kind of was listening, trying to make out what they were saying. He couldn't because of the din. But when the guy came back to the group that they all came up together from South Fork.
Yeah.
He said, what was that all about? He said, I was telling him he's got to get this weir out of here because it's clogging up. And he refused to do it. And there was a moment there where he thought he might take matters into his hand because this other guy, Ed was only 14 years old. Even though he was a coal miner, he was 14 years old.
Right.
This guy was a little bit older, in his 20s, but still significantly younger than Unger. But the protocol of the day, he He wouldn't go against the old man.
Jeez, yeah.
I
Man.
mean, he was mad, but he wouldn't go against. And it turns out, sometime later, Unger realized that was the only thing he had left, but by then it was too late.
Yeah, okay. Because they did try to, I guess, did Park try to pull out the grates at one point?
It wasn't Park, it was Unger that was directing that.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
Park wasn't really involved in that piece of it.
So
He was there,
right.
but that wasn't his idea.
I see. So at what point did Park get on his horse and ride off down to South Fork to try to get to the telegraph office?
That was a little bit early on, probably late morning,
Okay.
late to mid-morning. And he was sent by Unger. That was Unger's direction, because they realized this happened after the fact. They tried that and it didn't work. They tried plowing the metal, that didn't work. Nothing was working, and Unger was really starting to think this could go.
Yeah.
So he told Park, you ride into town. So he rode into town. It only took him 10 minutes. But unfortunately, he went into a spot of town where there were several guys hanging out. He wasn't familiar with South Fork. Had he been, remember I was telling you about the what if moments?
Right. Yeah.
Had he known, the telegraph office was only about 300 yards away.
Are you serious? You got that close?
So he said, look, the dam's, now he's a young guy, but he's clearly educated, very proper. And they said, the dam is going bad. I need you to go to the telegraph office and tell them. They said, we'll do it. And he goes, good, thanks. And he tries to heal back. But that's the what if, because the guy they sent had a dubious reputation.
Okay. Yeah.
He wasn't a drunkard, but he was unreliable.
Yeah.
So he goes crashing into Emma Ehrenfeld's tower, and she's up there. He comes in and says, there's a fella comes from the dam, and he describes him as like somebody in authority or something like that. He says, get a message there to the dam might fail. And she says, what's the message? And the guy's, that's all he told me.
Geez,
you know?
yeah, right.
So the what if moment is, had Park actually gone there, being educated, he would have carried a lot more weight.
Well, so I was reading that she actually didn't care for him bursting in on him like that because, like you said, he wasn't that well liked in the town. And
I didn't recall that she was overly agitated, but she was highly suspicious.
Right.
You know.
So it wasn't until somebody else came in and she actually trusted, right, that said he was up there and saw it. Is that when she actually sent
what
it?
What she did is she took the message and he left. The only person she could talk to was the telegraph operator in Mineral Point, a man called Pickerel.
Oh, okay.
And Pickerel had been a long time, 15 years, telegraph operator, very, very serious man.
Yeah.
And she said, typing, back and forth, telegraph, here's what just happened. Can you help me write this? And so he sends back and he wrote it, and it's in the book what he wrote.
Yeah.
And she said, that's perfect. So he said, my lines are down between Mineral Point and the next tower down, which was about 1.5 miles. It was the AO tower. But there's a lot of trackmen moving up and down, trying to keep things under order. I'll try to get it to them. Sure enough, he did.
Oh, he did?
He was very successful. A guy came by that he knew, recognized, a guy named Riekert. He gave him the note and said, you got to get this to the AO. Well, he goes down, and he was there to flag a washout. He gets down there, and just as he gets about halfway, he meets his foreman. And the foreman reads it and goes, I got this. So he sent him back to get his flag because they still needed a guy on the washout.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the foreman actually got it, and the message did get down to Johnstown.
Oh, okay.
So they were successful.
This right here is the actual tower we saw in that picture up there. This is where it's at.
This is where the tower and the culvert met.
Okay.
The wooden beams that are still left belong to the wooden tower that burned down in 1862.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the stone culvert was here. It was through this portion that the 2-foot pipes went, and then they spilled into an open culvert toward the face of the dam.
So this is it. This is the center of the break.
You're standing in the middle of the break, basically. And you can get a better view of the angle of the downstream side and the upstream side.
So to think about the force, because they said there was like a geyser shooting out the other side approximately halfway down the dam, right?
There was at least one that shot 30 feet out before gravity brought it back down.
So the amount of pressure it would need to get through that length of that dam.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's when there were a lot of signs, obviously, that things were going south. But that was one of them when they started noticing. One of the things when Park came back from South Fork, he noticed that as well. These geysers that were getting through in between the rocks, or were shooting out from the rocks.
Jeez.
This red one is the National Park Service is redoing it, I believe.
Huh.
It was the original one.
Original clubhouse.
The original clubhouse in 1881. And then this one was built several years later. You can tell the windows are original. See how they're weird.
Yeah, wow, look at this place. So the water would have came up right around here.
Right where the tree is, somewhere in there.
Jeez.
At the water's edge, so all of that was underneath, underwater.
So this town of St. Michael's, that was called St. Michael? St. Michael's actually mostly in the, where the
A lot of it would have been in the water, yeah.
Huh. So this is really, if a person didn't own a cottage here, and they just want to come up here and hunt or fish, they would stay in one of the rooms here.
Correct. But they had some limits. The club had a lot of rules, like they could only use it so many days of the season, so that other people could use it.
Okay.
And that sort of thing. But yeah, that was this was even the hierarchy had tiers. You know, if you belonged to the club, you were somebody. If you had your own cottage, you were really somebody.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Huh.
And they were all connected by a boardwalk.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, there was a boardwalk here.
Yeah, you could walk, basically connected they called it Cottage Row. This was all rocked up.
Oh, wow.
So what would happen is the original mines, some of the first mines started around the 1870s, and the Steinman brothers really had a major collier operation up here, and I'll show you where that was. So this is the creek we saw up at the dam site,
Okay.
and this is where it comes down, and it's about to, and I'm going to show you where, meet up with the Little Conemaugh.
Okay.
There's still some remnants over there. This was the Steinman Mine Complex, and we have photos that show you, but just to get perspective.
Yeah.
But it wasn't damaged, clearly, because you can see how much higher above the river, the water line it is.
Yeah.
So even though it lost 2 of its employees downriver.
Oh, so but this is the first death, right?
This is the
first death was right down here.
Right
from
where
the
that sign
Johnstown
is.
flood.
Yeah.
And that was it an employee here that?
Yeah, the mines let out early that day, and his name was Michael Mann. He was British, and he had a wife and 2 children back in England, and he was working to get their fare to get them bring back over. And in a very strange story, there were men standing up on Maple Street who knew him. The door came open of his shack, and they were surprised that he was still there because most everybody left to the higher ground. And he came out, according to the witness, as best they could see him, and he looked in this direction. And he went back in the cottage. Well, cottage, it was a shanty.
Yeah.
Went back in the shanty. And so I surmise he, either didn't see anything at the time or just felt any action was futile at that point, because minutes later, the wave crashed.
The wall came in.
His body was carried all the way down to the viaduct where it was found 10 days later.
Really?
In such a bad state, they buried it where they found him. And the second man to die was a guy named Howard Schaefer, down in that same area. He was working with 3 other guys to clear the bridge, one of the bridges. They ran to the Steinman mine. It had debris, and so when the flood came, They all hightailed it for the Billtown Hill over here. For whatever reason, even though he's very youthful, he's only 22, he either slipped, fell, what have you. The other 3 made it, but he didn't.
Oh, jeez.
His wife was inconsolable.
Jeez, so the first 2 deaths
We're right down
from the
here.
Johnstown flood
Right down here.
Wow. That's part of South Fork up there.
This is part of South Fork. You see how steep it is.
Jeez.
You can still see there's cobblestones. The brown, the light brown, that's still cobblestone. Right here, you see where this curve comes around?
Yeah.
You can't see it at all, but over the side, there is a stone bridge, railroad bridge.
Oh, okay.
At the time of the flood, on the 31st, that stone bridge was made of metal.
Oh.
Okay, but it was there, right there. Just past that, like where the grove of trees are, was the SO Tower. The SO Tower was the telegraph tower with Emma Ehrenfeld. So she's in the tower, she's in the telegraph tower down there. This hill over here is Argyle Hill. So she had to go across the tracks to get to the tipple.
Okay.
It was with her, Mr. Wilson, Engineer Butler. The telegraph tower was there, as I said, right as it curves around, right by the copse of trees.
Yeah.
The railroad depot was right across from here, so it would have been right there. Right there where the track is.
Yeah.
That's where the old railroad depot would have been. So you see they were pretty close to each other.
Yeah.
So when you see all that communication of running back and forth, it wasn't that much of a stretch. They were only running several hundred yards. The track, kind of like it does now, came around out of the Steinman mines. That was called the Steinman siding. That morning, they held up the trains from going further east because the track was compromised. That morning, once everything stabilized, you had the dairy freight, which was a train that came from Derry, Pennsylvania, which isn't too far from here. They had him pull onto the siding by the tower. Another freight was on the Argyle side. There was yet another one with Engineer Hoy that was backed onto the Steinman track. Okay. And right on the other side of the bridge, on the main line, was the express train. Now, this was the only passenger train. It had about 26 people, I think. So these were relatively small, relatively maneuverable engines. But they had to shut down. So when they came down, they let their boilers go down and the steam came down. That plays a big role. The suggestion is that when Parke came on his horse, the men that he met were right about over there where the trucks parked. So you can see when I told you earlier, had he known that he was only that far away.
Oh, so Parke stopped right here. That's when he ran into those guys.
And said, hey, can you take the sign or take the message to the nearest telegraph?
He asked them where it was, right? And they refused to tell him.
I don't know that he asked him. I think he just said, can you take the message to the nearest telegraph? If they had asked him, they would have told him. But
the story I heard, whether it's true, like you said, there's so much misinformation out there, but the story I heard was he told the townspeople, and they were just like, what were you doing at the dam? And he said, he told them who he worked for, the hunting club, and they were like, well, we don't have anything to say to you. I guess they didn't like the club.
Oh, no, they hated it.
Yeah, right.
No, they hated it, because these people, when they would come into town, I mean, they had nothing to do with the townspeople.
Yeah, and I guess their issue is because they blocked off all this hunting land and fishing land and won't let them access it, basically.
Right, yeah. That was a private club, and they didn't rub elbows with the hoi polloi.
So he gets down here, he tells the one guy that's not really a well-liked guy in town to go look for this telegraph station.
Well, just take the message to the telegraph station, and then he rode back out of town on this road.
Oh, okay.
See, this here is Railroad Street, and as it goes around the turn, it becomes Lake Road, now Lake Street. And it was this road that went all the way to the cottage. So you have the scenario now where you have a train that's idled on this siding, 2 sidings down there, they're idled, and then you have the big passenger train idling just on the other side of the bridge. So they're going back and forth, and the engineer Butler, who had the express, very savvy engineer, he didn't like the vibe, and they didn't move without orders. But he was going to take a chance. So he went and he told Doherty, the agent, he said, look, I don't like where I'm sitting, especially if that dam goes, because you could see it's got a bullseye on him.
Yeah.
He said, so I'm going to move my train up, and I'm going to put it adjacent right in here. Okay? And he did it. And it wasn't long after that the dam failed. So just that happenstance move saved those people. He gets out and he goes and tells his firemen, if anything happens, you take this 3 miles up the road to Summerhill.
So the flood's coming.
Yeah.
So somebody runs in there and tells Emma, hey, we got to go.
It was actually a combination of things. They saw it coming from out here. Mr. Wilson, who had just left the message there, was on his way back to Argyle Mine, where he was the superintendent.
Okay.
As he's walking out, all of a sudden there's commotion, people running everywhere. He looks up the valley, not sure what's coming, but his badness, and he starts waving his hands to Emma up in the window. She sees it, and about the same time, the guys down below that are they're sitting around the stove getting warm. They hear it too, and they see it. So they all run out as quick as possible. Wilson leads them across the tracks.
I was sitting with my back to the window, and they said, "Look at the people running." I wonder what's wrong. And just then, it seemed the cry arose that it was coming. And he looked out of the window and said something about the reservoir going. And he and the conductor started downstairs. I then went to the window and looked out and saw people running. And some were screaming. And some hollered for me to come. And I looked out of the window on the side of the river and saw it coming. Of course, I can't describe it to you. It just seemed like a mountain coming, and it seemed close. I don't know just how close it was, but I knew I must go if I wanted to get out. And I started and ran down the stairs, without waiting to get my hat or anything. And there is a coal tipple about opposite the office, and I ran down across the track and up those steps. It was a very short time, not more than 2 minutes until the office was taken.
For some odd reason, Butler, the last one in line, decides he's going to peel off. And he does, and he makes his a very mysterious journey along that side of the hill where he comes upon loaves of bread that are freshly baked. As he's making his way along here, part of the floodwaters hit Argyle Hill and backwash. And they backwash up this way, and they start picking up some houses. Well, as you can see by the topography, if you're in a house over here, wind, lightning, rain, all that, you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
It's likely that a lot of people didn't know about it until their house got off the foundation.
Really?
They were on this side. Now, no one died up here.
Wow.
Because it was a relatively gentle movement. Although it lifted the railroad depot up, and when the waters receded, it set it back down on these foundations.
So the railroad depot was right here.
Right here.
Okay.
Right in here. And
so there was a clock on that depot.
yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty about timing, and you know that people's perception of time under duress changes. It was really hard to get an accurate. Now, the one accurate time that we have established was 4:07 in Johnstown. That's universally accepted as when the flood actually hit the town proper.
Right.
As to when the dam broke, they've used 3:15 in the afternoon, but we think that was incorrect, and here's why. When the floodwaters came down and hit Argyle Hill, the backwash came and knocked the railroad depot off its foundation.
Oh, wow.
At the time, it had a wall clock.
Okay.
When the wall, and this is the testimony of Doherty, the agent, when the wall clock was knocked out of plumb, it stopped.
Oh.
And it stopped at 3:08.
Interesting.
So if it stopped at 3:08, the dam had to break obviously before that. So we suspect that the actual breakage was somewhere around 250 to 255.
Interesting. And that was a Pennsylvania Railroad depot.
Correct. Yeah.
Where's that clock at?
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Where
Boy,
is it
wouldn't
at?
that be something?
I know, right? Yeah.
So here's where the excitement picks up now. So they run over. However, engineer Bennett and his conductor, they don't. They come out with them, but they know that their train is on the other side of the tower at the siding. As they're coming around, one of these decisions under a great deal of duress, he makes an instant decision. He tells the conductor, we've been laid up so long, I'm not going to have enough steam to get this train out of here. But maybe we can get the locomotive out. So he tells him to pull the pin on the tender. He pulls the pin, but here's the thing. All the while he knows he has 2 men in the caboose.
Oh.
He pulls the pin, they jump on the locomotive, and they start chugging painfully slow across the iron bridge. They start to build up a little bit of steam. Just as they get here and they think they're going to make it, this train pulls out in front of them, the one that was on this siding. So he has to go full reverse, slam on the brakes. Finally, he's in a tough spot. He tells everybody to bail out.
Yeah.
They jump out and they scramble. Where we're standing right now, scramble up this hill. The engineer Bennett gets off on the other side and he's dodging buildings and stuff. He gets disoriented. Believe it or not, when he finally gets his bearings, he's somewhere in here right next to the train that pulled out in front of him.
Oh, geez.
So he climbs on it.
Really?
He gets on it and he looks for his men and they're up in here. Everybody survived.
Huh.
Okay? So unfortunately, we talked about the first 2 fatalities. The other 2 were the fireman and the brakeman in the caboose.
Oh, are you serious?
That train
was the
got
other
wiped
2. I
away.
was just going to ask
Yeah, that was the other
that's who
2.
it was.
And the
Jeez.
train that was over here didn't have a chance. So, but nobody was killed. They saw what was coming. They tried to make an attempt. They weren't going anywhere, so they all clambered up Argyle Hill and they survived.
Wow. Yeah, so I wonder if we can still get up Argyle Hill or not, or is that private property?
No, we're actually going to go there this
are we really?
afternoon.
Oh, geez, yeah.
That's where the
Okay.
path of the flood is.
So this is called Argyle Hill.
This side of it.
So this is the hill that Emma Ehrenfeld.
Yeah, but way back there.
Okay.
Yeah, but this whole hillside was.
Okay.
But right close to town. We're about 1.5 miles outside of South Fork now.
Okay.
And this is a path to go down to the viaduct.
Oh. So this is a little known path that
Yes.
mainly only the locals know about here. So we're getting a inside view.
Tell it's locals because unfortunately there's a lot of graffiti. This is known as the Bluffs.
Oh, okay.
What a shame. It's all grown in, you can't see it, but the viaduct is right there.
Oh, really?
But the viaduct is right there. So if you can imagine, you see where the water is here?
Yeah.
This is what they were talking about, the oxbow. This is the neck of the oxbow, from here to there. So as the water came down like this, the majority of it hit that hill, which is very steep, and went all the way around it. But some of the water had too much momentum, and it just literally jumped up from where the water is there, over the tracks, down to this side, and met with the other water right on the upstream side of the viaduct.
And destroyed the viaduct.
And destroyed it, yeah. We'll go and see if you can see if there's another possible angle.
Yeah, there has to be.
that we
view
can
of that
see
thing.
it.
I can kind of see.
And if we had
I
more,
can see the rocks from it. Yeah. Jeez. This is nice area. Wow.
we would sit up here for a long time, watch the trains come by.
Oh, this is great.